Hello. This is Patrick Stack, co-founder of Sports Biz Camps. Really excited to welcome some very impressive industry professionals here to share their background, experiences, and pathways with some students, or specifically our interns here for the summer Sports Biz Camp. So camp starts a week from tomorrow, and we wanted to bring these wonderful people together to kind of build momentum and drive awareness for the camp. And specifically, you know, we've recruited some really impressive female sports industry executives. Right now, our camp is tracking really well in overall registration, but only 20% of our registrants are female, and the number needs to be 50-50. So we think maybe one of the obstacles there is that maybe young girls don't see themselves working in sports. So we've recruited 4 amazingly impressive people to talk about their career pathways in sports. So joining us today are also a number of our Sports Biz Camps interns, which you'll see them kind of chiming in from time to time with some questions. You guys all look wonderful. I want you to know that. And I think we'll probably start with Brooke. A bit of background about where you work, and kind of your pathway there.
Hi, I'm Brooke Faw. I'm the Vice President of Client Experiences at Bespoke Sports Entertainment. It's a sports marketing agency based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I basically run our hospitality group, which has had to take quite a bit of a shift here lately as events have not had fans, and so we've kind of expanded into the virtual world and brought events to fans instead of bringing fans to events. So that's been really interesting. My background, believe it or not, I was a kindergarten teacher and a high school basketball coach, and then just decided that I wanted to pursue a passion and had kind of a quarter-life crisis, and just went down a different path. And we'll talk a little bit further, you know, as we get into some of the questions, but I was just lucky enough to meet the right people and work really hard. And, you know, in a very short time have really grown in the sports industry. And I love it so much that I'm not going anywhere else.
Thank you, Brooke. Laila, how about you?
Hi, I'm Laila Brock, Vice President of Sponsorship Sales and Operations for JMI Sports. We're the multimedia rights holder for Pitt Athletics, which means I work on the Pitt campus and oversee all the sponsorship operations for the department. I got into sports very early on. I knew I wanted to work in sports because I was an athlete in college. I went to Penn State and ran track there. After I left Penn State, I worked for a nonprofit called the National Consortium for Academics and Sports. After that, I worked at Florida Atlantic University as an academic advisor for the football team. I wanted to get into operations, and so I worked for the Orange Bowl. It was the FedEx Orange Bowl back then, but now it's the Capital One Orange Bowl. I should know that as the person who oversees sponsorship sales. But I oversaw the operations for the Orange Bowl, and then I was very lucky enough to, as Brooke mentioned, know the right people and worked really hard, and was tapped to be one of the founding staff members of the College Football Playoff, and was there for about 6 years overseeing all the operations and team operations and events for the College Football Playoff, the national championship game. And then just about a year ago, actually, was fortunate enough again to know the right people and had done the right work, and was called to come and lead the team here at Pitt, overseeing sponsorship sales.
Thank you very much, Laila. Amy, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky enough to be the head of U.S. sponsorship for BMO Harris Bank. And what we do is have major partnerships across our U.S. footprint, including relationships with the Bulls, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Badgers, the Wild, the Blackhawks, you name it. We have partnerships with NBA, NHL, and college teams. I started out in sponsorship in our nation's capital, working in a sports network in DC, and absolutely loved it. Transitioned into sales and marketing in college athletics for 17 years. And I thought, there's no way I'm ever going to leave sales and marketing. And then one of my clients, BMO, tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, why don't you come to the brand side? I said, sure, I'll come to the brand side for 2 years, and then I'll go back into the sponsorship sales side. I've been there 7 years, and I absolutely love BMO, and I'm learning so much, not just about sponsorships, but continuing to leverage my negotiation from when I was selling to now negotiate against the people that I used to be. So to reinforce everything that the team has said before, it was really about the mentors and the networking that I was able to create through every opportunity and every adventure that I had to get where I am today.
Thank you, Amy. And then last but not least, Maggie Parker.
Hi, Maggie Parker, Senior Manager of Partnership Development at the Golden State Warriors. So I am in a role where I oversee our naming rights partnership with JPMorgan Chase. So obviously a very exciting year for us at the Warriors with our move to Chase Center. I've been with the Warriors now for about a year at this point. Before working at the Warriors, was still in the NBA family, so I was at the Charlotte Hornets. So for all of you in Charlotte, my heart goes out to you guys because I miss Charlotte so much. Don't tell anyone I said that over here. Gosh, this is recorded. But so I was at the Charlotte Hornets before that. And speaking, to Amy's point about mentorship and networking and knowing the right people, I actually got my start in this business because of Pat Stack. So Pat was the one who had connected me with the right people in Charlotte, and I had worked really, really hard to land the role at GMR. So I was at GMR for a couple months before joining the Hornets. So I've played a couple roles now, at the agency and then the team, and then who knows, maybe one day at the brand. So looking forward to the conversation and how we can help.
So let me be the first one to say you're all very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Really great introduction. Very impressive. Now, I think one thing that we focus on with our campus is not know what sponsorship is, what sponsorship sales is, what activation is. So Maggie, kind of starting with you, what do people think that you do and what do you actually do?
It's a great question. A lot of times when people hear that I work for an NBA team, they think, oh, you only work the games, or, oh, you only work in season. And so a lot of times people think, when we're not playing basketball, like right now, given that the Warriors didn't make the 22 cut team, we are still working very, very hard to service our partners. So a lot of times people just think that, we're only working the games, so we're only at events, or we're only working in season. But what I actually do, it's 365, we're constantly working. And like I said, I work on our naming rights partnership with JPMorgan Chase. And so what that means is, they're now a partner of ours. And so we need to make sure that we're fulfilling on all the contractual assets. And so contractual assets meaning hospitality, to Brooke's point. So welcoming people to the game, making sure they have a pleasurable experience, making sure that all of their signage is properly to brand around the arena, making sure that we're building immersive experiences for their customers and for their clients. So it's a lot of work, and it's a lot more than just the events or just the calendar year for the games.
You plan parties and throw events?
Kind of, yeah. We have a nice suite
Okay.
where we bring people out and they get to eat free food and hang out and watch the game. So it's a good time.
Does anybody else want to tackle that question? Like they have a family member that still doesn't know what they do. They've been working in sports for however long.
Well, it is funny because as Maggie said, she's working with a bank, and I am a bank that supports other teams, so the Bulls and the Bucks. So it's been really interesting in this time to figure out how to get value when maybe your team won't be going into the bubble in Orlando, or your team will be going into the bubble, and what does that look like? So my parents don't understand any of it. They think, they're like, why are you working so long? Well, this evening we had a virtual event with some alumni to talk about The Last Dance and how they were portrayed in The Last Dance with some clients. So that's an evening event, but they don't understand why I'm working when nothing is going on. So it really has been interesting to try to explain to people that, my job is to make sure we're getting value out of all these partnerships and what they look like depending on the team and depending on what each league wants to do. So they still don't get it. They understand that maybe my brand can sit next to, a cool logo, but they really don't. But I will say for me, I just kind of tell them it's about helping the bank build relationships and having the teams help us do that. So that each team or each property is helping us build these relationships. So I think they get that, but I don't really know.
Brooke or Laila, you guys want to tackle that too?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it from the operations side versus from the sales side. I think that Amy and Maggie really hit the nail on the head when it comes to the sponsorship aspect of it. from the operations aspect of it, I'll speak specifically about the college football playoff. I always got the question, was that a full-time job? Did you actually have work all year long? And how long does it how long does it take to plan a national championship game? It can only take about 3 months. And I used to tell them it takes about 5 years. And so that's why it was a full-time job. And that's why it took so long. And we would work so many hours and we would, travel so much. And so people thought, again, that I just planned parties and just hung out, or that, our job was just to show up in a city and put a national championship game in a stadium, and that was it. But they didn't realize that it took so many different layers in order to make that thing run the right way, whether it was working with the FBI in order to make sure that the security was correct, or whether it was working with the city to make sure that we have the right ordinances to put up those signs that you see all over the city. It was just a really big opportunity and a lot of work. But like most folks will know, and they'll say, is that people don't understand that it really does take a lot of work to do the things that it takes for a national championship game or a regular season game or anything in between.
And from the agency side, everyone thinks I'm Jerry Maguire. That's what they think I do, and including my dad, who explains that he introduces me to his friends as the female Jerry Maguire, which couldn't be further from the truth. But, I think agency in general is confusing to folks, especially folks that have never been in it. And you don't necessarily, our goal is to kind of not be seen, and just to kind of be the people that get everything done, but give the credit to everyone else. And so I find it ironic that that's how people view us, but I think that it's funny. And then I have a son who's 8 who, when he was in kindergarten and he was asked to write what his parents do, he wrote that his mommy drives in NASCAR because he, sees me at races. And so he thinks I drive. And that was pretty cool for a 5-year-old. And he put it up on the bulletin board, and all the parents thought I was a NASCAR driver. So I need to add some things to my resume, apparently.
I've got a number of other questions, but I'd love to open it up to the students for any follow-up questions they might have. And if you don't have a question, I'm going to call on you. That won't happen during the camp, though.
I guess I'll start with a question. I really didn't know that there were that many aspects to sponsorships. I guess I had a very narrow perspective of what sponsorship is. So any of you could really answer, but what do you feel like are some skills that would definitely help in sponsorships? Because that's also an area that I'm kind of eyeing, interested in, but I'm not sure yet.
So I'll start on the other side of working for a brand. I personally believe if you had the opportunity to sell sponsorships, activate sponsorships, and then be on the brand side, you can teach anyone sponsorships. What sponsorships to me means is connecting two brands together to bring the best out of both those brands. Now a bank, as I work for, is not very fashionable and a very cool brand. So partnering with another team like the Bulls or the Bucks elevates my brand, makes my brand cooler, makes my bank seem more reachable. And so that is kind of how we look at sponsorships in kind of a different level. There's measurement, there's data, there's all this awesome stuff that we can get into in the 5 course. But in general, my job is to find the right brand that can connect with my bank to complement it. Now the challenge is, how do we bring that to life? And that's where we go to the experts, the team, and work with them and at the agencies to figure out how we make that come to life, so that when you're at a game or you're watching or you're on TikTok, how do you see my brand with that brand?
That is actually, it's a great question, Destiny. I'm sorry to cut you off, Laila, because we have sponsorship we haven't talked probably a lot about, and a lot of students aren't familiar with it. But if you're a high school student, you've experienced it when you played rec baseball and there's the name of a team on the back of your shirt, right? The Bad News Bears had Chico's bail bonds, right? Like, someone is providing those uniforms for you so you can play sports. That's the core of it. And I think what I really love about our industry, really love about camp, really love about our panel, is that we have 4 different jobs within sponsorship represented on this panel today, right? We've got Amy with the brand, Brooke with an agency, Laila in sponsored sales, which we're going to come back to. Sounds like a very scary word, sales. And Maggie at the team from an activation standpoint. So that right there shows you there's 4 career pathways doing something that you've intuitively understood as a student or a student athlete playing, but you didn't think about those jobs. So Amy, thank you for that perspective. Laila, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. I was going to talk about just the sales aspect of it, is that it's really about relationships. It's about building relationships, maintaining relationships, and fostering those relationships so that they turn into a sponsorship sale. And so it's one of those things where, you know, we talk about the sales cycle a lot, where it's not transactional, where you're not going in and saying to a bank and saying, I need XYZ amount of money. You go in and you talk to the bank, you talk to the agency and say, what are the things that you need? What are the things that you hope to gain from a partnership? Not necessarily a sponsorship, we call it a partnership because we want to partner with those people. We want to make sure that they understand that we're a part of their team, and we build a relationship with them. We establish their goals and we figure out what it is that's going to make sure that their brand is elevated when they're partnered with the Pitt brand. And so for me, it's really more so the skill that I think that is just invaluable in sponsorships is just the ability to maintain and build really good relationships.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Zach, making you proud already. You got a question?
Yeah, Ms. Brock, you talked about, all the work that goes into, just one football game, having to work, with the FBI, and I'm sure a ton of other, tedious things that, don't get talked about. So what's it like to, see the finished product and, just see the game being played?
It's pretty awesome, actually. It's one of those things where you see something, and I'll talk about just my experience with the CFP. We were able to build an iconic event that did not exist 7 years ago. And so when we got there, there was no blueprint, which was really scary, but really fun at the same time. And every single year, because it was in a different city, we had a different blueprint. And so it was really cool to see it from its infancy, starting in January, where you're in a city for, a couple of days at a time. And every month you're going to that same city just a couple of days at a time till the time that you're in that city in January for the national championship game, and seeing something that went from a drawing on a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet that, outlines the numbers to an actual game that's being played, or a concert that's being held, or a banner that's on the, on a street pole on the street, or a billboard or something like that. It's really cool to see something to go from a plan to an actual event. So it's really, really cool, and just really an unimaginable experience sometimes.
Maggie, can you tackle that too with the Chase Center?
Yeah.
Kind of talk about what that was like, because I mean, you're opening a big event versus a huge building, right?
Yeah. No, when I first joined the Warriors, I mean, we had our venue, so they had broken ground at that point, but it wasn't really a venue quite yet. There weren't seats in there. There wasn't anything. Whenever we had to enter the building, it was, you had to wear boots, you had to wear jackets, you had to wear gloves, hats, hard hats, everything, because it was one of the things that, you were taking the right safety precautions, but it wasn't a building quite yet. And so we had to work together with, the city and with Chase and with all of our partners to bring this place to life that a Warriors fan could enjoy. To Laila's point, like, this started with drawings and shop drawings and all these things that we, were looking at, and we were going through decks and things like that to build club spaces or bars or things like that, renderings, or how could we position a partner's brand in the best light. And it was interesting. It was a unique experience, one that I will take with me for a long time. And it's one of those things where it's imaginable seeing it for the first time because you've worked so hard to bring it all to life. And when I was at GMR specifically, I worked on the Olympics. And so similar to that, it was an event that I had been brought onto the team a year before the Olympics actually happened. And so at that point, we were just looking at, run shows and potential hospitality areas, but we had to identify hotels to host athletes and moms and all these things. And so we had to pull all these pieces together. And so on event day, or, when we first had our first event at Chase Center, or we had, we landed in Rio for our first event in the Olympics, it's unbelievable to see all your work come to life.
Brooke, can you elaborate on that as well? You were a former teacher, so I'm sure it was very rewarding to teach kindergartners. As a teacher, I can appreciate that. But talk through that satisfying feeling of a job well done when you've put in X amount of hours or been on your feet for 20 hours.
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things, and I love, I've been really lucky in my career to have worked on the brand side, now worked on the agency side. I've never worked on the team side, but I have enough friends that I feel like I live vicariously through them. And there's so many pros and cons to each side. One of the things that I love about the agency side is you get to do this multiple times. So, like where Laila was just focusing on college football playoffs and Maggie was just focusing on their brand new building, from the agency side, whatever our clients wanted to do, we got to do. And so I had a client who was one of the founding partners of the Raiders. And so we helped kind of create that space. And then we had a client who created the Battle at Bristol, which was the world's largest college football game. And we actually created that event in the middle of Bristol Motor Speedway. And we've had other clients that have just completely made up events all on their own, and we've kind of brought the babies to life, and all of that happened basically within the same year, within the same couple of years. And so from an agency perspective, there's never a dull day, because what these ladies are experiencing kind of in the thick of things, we're doing that like 3 or 4 times. And I've been really lucky that I work for a small enough agency that I get to get my hands in a lot of things versus some of the larger agencies where you focus just on one. And so that's been one of the blessings that I've had, is just to be able to see it all. And it's crazy and it's a lot of work, but it's really been really cool to be a part of a lot of those different events.
And I want to just kind of distill that for our students, and I'm going to kick it to Lana for a question. I think that's what makes our industry unique, is that the feeling of satisfaction. You get to actually see people enjoy the Battle of Bristol that you helped create, or see people enjoy a pit game, or see people like be mesmerized by the Chase Center, right? Or see people enjoy Horace Grant, Tony Kukoc, and the rest of the bowl. Like, you guys created that, so it's very, very satisfying. And if that's the type of person that you are, you like to do things for other people, hospitality, whatever. I think this was really the industry for you. And kudos to you guys. Not many, maybe a barber, like you can see someone like walk out, look better than they walked in. But for the most part, not a lot of jobs have that. And that's really what I think binds us all together. So Lana, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. So each of you have mentioned the importance of, relationship building and even knowing the right people. Do you have, and this is open for anyone, any advice on how to kind of hone and perfect those type of interpersonal skills that can be kind of hard to figure out?
Well, I think this is something, and this is probably advice I'd give anyone, and it's helped me throughout my career. It was kind of 3 things: be curious, be eager, and be authentic. So curious, in the appropriate right way, I was able to ask questions. And I know Zach shared his story earlier that he was able to ask questions and do interviews with people. So finding those right people to be curious with and to learn. And then the eager, if somebody says, hey, I've got an opportunity, it may not be exactly what you think, but be eager, take on the challenge, take on the adventure. And it's helped me throughout my career. I did not think I'd be working at a bank in sponsorships, running US sponsorships, but I took the adventure on, saying, okay, where could this take me? And I was very lucky. And then you talk about creating those relationships. It's about being authentic. I think sometimes we get nervous or we want to impress somebody, and just remembering who we are and how we can communicate and be natural in that communication. That authenticity will shine through when you're asking that person those questions and being really interested. So I would always recommend authenticity above all, because people can really tell if you're interested in their career or you're interested in learning more about them.
Do one of our panelists have like a cheat code for how they build a relationship with someone, or something clever that someone's done to try and connect with them?
I don't have any cheat code. I think it's just being authentic and being who you are. I loved what Amy had to say. I would add, be humble. There were a lot coming from being a kindergarten teacher. No job was too small, or no job was beneath me, and I think that being able to be on the ground level and getting my hands dirty at an early time in my career, and also volunteering. I think people see if you have a servant heart, and the way that I was able to get the first step into sports was I volunteered for an athlete's nonprofit foundation and helped him plan events. And I got that because I I was his kid's teacher. And he was like, hey, you seem really good at organizing things. Like, I've got this event, can you help? And I just, gave it my all because it was for a great cause. And he was part of a great family. And when you give yourself selflessly, then people are much more willing to give you something and give you their time or give you their connections or just to help you. There's a lot of kids out there that will reach out to me and ask me for my help, and I don't mind helping because we all had help. But the person who reaches out and says, hey, I noticed that you volunteer at the animal shelters on Saturday, like, can I come join you? That's someone that I'm going to give a heck of a lot more time to than someone that, reaches out and says, hey, I saw that you're connected to Pat Stack. Can you help me? Can you introduce me to him?
For the record, the volunteering at the shelter is a cheat code for sure.
Okay, well, there you go.
Cheat code. It's a great cheat code. Maggie, Laila, anyone else want to address that? Or Zach has another question as well.
No, I think it's what these ladies have said is very true. In addition to being authentic, I think it's important to be intentional. Reaching out to people with intentions of learning from them, not necessarily just to build a network. I think it's obviously important to build a network and build relationships with people, absolutely. But to go about an intentional way to say, I'm very interested in your position, or, to Brooke's point, I see that you volunteer, you're being intentional in that process. And I think also, when we're building relationships with people, follow through. It's really easy to have a conversation with someone and take 15, 30 minutes of their time to understand what their position is like, what their day-to-day is, and ask all those questions. But if you're retaining the relationship through follow-up by saying, hey, I saw this, it was interesting, or I saw the Warriors in the news and I thought of you, I just wanted to pass it along. And not necessarily every time that you reach out to someone, you're asking for something, but you're just making sure that the line of communication is still open, and those people will be more considerate of you as positions become available.
Laila, do you want to tackle that, or we'll see what Zach has to say?
Yeah, I think, Maggie, you said exactly what I was thinking too, is just don't be afraid to follow up. I think that, oftentimes we'll get a call or an email from somebody and they, say, hey, I want to meet with you, or I just want to talk to you. And then that's the only time that it happens. I think that what you'll find among anybody who's been in the sports industry for any amount of time is that we all want to help the next person coming up, because we want to make sure that the sports industry is left in good hands. And so we want to make sure that people are reaching out and are learning from us, learning from the people who came before us and all those things. And the last thing I'll say on that is just don't be afraid to stretch and get out of your comfort zone. I am naturally a very introverted person, and I'll tell you that, just in this small circle of friends here, but I will push myself to be an extrovert and had to push myself to be an extrovert in order to work in sales. Can you imagine being an introvert working in sales? That's not going to work out for anybody. And so you have to be able to stretch outside of your comfort zone, whether it's, talking to people, reaching out to people, or just using the connections that you have in order to be able to find good mentors.
Great answers. Zach, you had a question? And then Dustin will get you next. Zach, you had a question? Yeah, there you go.
Me? Oh, no, I raised my hand for the previous question.
Okay, there you go. Destiny, you're up. I'll be ready.
So honing in on really what this Zoom meeting is about, like just women in sports, how have you all really asserted, like I don't know if asserted is the right word, but just has there been any type of really pushback with you all in any positions, and how do you just navigate being, just in a higher position just as a woman in sports?
Girl, how much time you have? I'll start. I'm sure every lady on here has got story after story after story. I do think, I'll get on my soapbox for 2 seconds. I do think just in general, what's going on with our society is just opening everyone's eyes that we need to see everyone, and we need to respect everyone, and we need to just be conscious about what we think and what we say, and that there's a bunch of well-intentioned people who say things that they don't mean, but the way it comes across, people just don't even think about. So I'll give you an example. When I first started, I was younger and prettier. I've gotten old now. But I had a coworker who said to me that they needed me to be more than the pretty face that drove the golf cart, because in hospitality, we drive golf carts around and move people from place to place. And I don't recommend this, but I was very not happy with that coworker and very young and dumb. And I took off my very nice high-heeled shoe and I chucked it across the room at him. And he looked at me and I said, that is not okay. Like, what you just said to me was so demeaning. Like, I am so much more than that. And you know that. And he was like, I meant it as a compliment. Like, I was calling you pretty. And I was like, people need to realize that you don't say that that's not a compliment, especially in this world. And so I think the biggest advice that I have for people is to be you. I've had so many people tell me that I'm too nice, that I smile too much, that I hug, and this was, pre-COVID, but, don't hug people. People see that as, a weakness and that they can step all over me. Don't get it twisted, and Pat knows this. Like, I am very nice until you try and step all over me, and then I'm very quick to let you know that you're not going to step all over
Don't
me.
say it like that. They're gonna think that I did something to make you mad. I didn't.
No. But I think that there's not a one shoe fits all, pun intended, for females. Like, we all can't be, hard nosed like you see. Some females be, especially in executive roles. We can't all be, super friendly. Like, it has to be who you are, and just make that path, and just understand that every man that works in this world is the same way. Some of them are really friendly. Some of them are a little bit more introverted, and they make it work for them. And so I guess what I'm saying is, don't see it as like, I'm a female and I have to fit into a man's world. Just see it as, I'm a person who has to figure out how I, as a person, am going to be successful in this world. And the minute that you see yourself as that, you're going to be a lot more successful and a lot less stressed and throwing a lot less shoes than trying to prove yourself as like, I'm this girl and, I am a woman, hear me roar, and you must respect me.
And then I would add on, as a hiring manager and as someone who's looking at people to hire, we have to be part of the solution, whether it's race, it's male, female, whatever it is, we need to be part of the solution. And so for me, it's checking on blind spots. It's challenging my other leaders to make sure we are hiring a diverse workforce, because it makes us better, period. It makes us better and makes us a better company, and challenging the organizations that we sponsor and work for to do the same, and have those challenging conversations with them too, and say, what does your workforce look like? Here's what we believe, and we want to partner with people who believe and have the same values, not just put it on a piece of paper, but actually act. And that's very important as we look at our culture and moving forward in corporate America and with our teams that we partner with.
Destiny, the only other thing that I would say, just to echo what Amy and Brooke said, is that it's okay to be assertive, and it's actually okay to say the word assertive as well. Mm-hmm. I know that there are biases that exist that would prevent you from wanting to say that, or make you want to think that it's a bad thing, it's a bad word, but it's not. I know that oftentimes women are, we might be considered a bad word if we are assertive. Women of color, we might be called the angry Black woman as well. And those biases do exist, but you do have to do exactly what Brooke said, is just be yourself. And if you're yourself, you're authentic, and you're doing your job and you're doing it well, who cares what people are going to say about you or will think about you? Because they're going to think it anyway. So you might as well just be yourself.
And along the same lines, confidence is another one, right? So like, if you're doing your job, you're being authentic, you're crushing it, you're doing everything expected of you, but if you don't have the confidence to advocate for yourself in the moments of, I deserve this promotion, I deserve this added responsibility, I deserve XYZ because of what I've done and what I've showed, then no one else is going to advocate for you. I think as women, a lot of times we get into the, tendencies of, oh, that's okay, or oh, I'm sorry, and we lead with a lot of those types of those prompts when we're speaking. But when you are assertive, and that's okay, when you are assertive in those conversations and you're advocating for yourself based on the accomplishments that you've done and the value that you've added to the organization, you do deserve the credit. You do deserve the praise. So yes, absolutely. Be confident, be assertive, be authentic, be you.
And I would add on to that is, you know, Maggie mentions all those things, and sometimes you need a network of humans to help you get that data, put that information together, why you're successful, to create that. And that's where we talk about networking or mentoring. You know, there's an organization that many of us belong to, Women in Sports and Events. And those are people that I reach out to if I'm negotiating my next salary increase. And I'm like, okay, what do I deserve, but what am I going to ask for? Men have always been a little bit better at this. And it doesn't matter if it's men, women, whoever it is, find those people who can help you, even in your first job. You know, I was the party master at Chuck E. Cheese for my first job. And now that was the best title I ever had. But like, I found out that the game room master made $2 more than I did, and he was a guy. And so I went home and I sat with my dad and I said, I don't think this is fair. And he helped me put together a plan of why, not because I'm a girl I deserve it, but why my hard work ethic. And I got my two extra dollars. So I think I made $8, which is really cool. But those little things can help you, but you have to find that network of trusted people. You know, I would pick up the phone and say, what's your salary range, and kind of learn. And that just goes back to, as all of us said, is our network and our mentoring really can help us get to that next level. So just to add on to what Maggie said, definitely having those proof points will help you continue to move forward.
And being very specific, how do you guys build confidence, right? Like what are the steps that you guys take to become more confident, knowing that you need to do that? And first off, and Amy, I can't believe you left party master out of your bio. Like,
sorry,
not
yes.
talk about the house.
First job was the best title ever. I was the party master at Chuck E. Cheese. It was amazing.
But yeah, what are steps you guys take to build more confidence, or when you're feeling less than, like, how do you assert yourself? Do you have any of the things that you do that maybe you want to share with some of our high school students?
I will tell you, and this is going to sound silly, but it's the truth. I oftentimes, you know, if you're in the middle of an event or you're in the middle of something crazy, you kind of feel you doubt yourself a little bit. So I remember one time I was in the middle of a whole lot going on, and I called my mom and I said, I just don't have any confidence right now. And she's told me, stand in the Wonder Woman stance. You can do anything if you stand like that. And so at any moment when I just felt like I was not going to do my best, or I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I literally would just stand there like this and like stand with my hands on my hips with a strong stance, and it worked. You know, you stand with your shoulders back, your head held high, you can do it. But beyond that, I think that drawing on powerful people, strong people who are around you, you draw on their strengths as well. I think that's immeasurable. And I see Brooke nodding her head, and it's the truth, is that when you have a good teammate that you can turn to and say, I feel weak right now, and he or she can say, but I've got your back and I'll help you be stronger. That's beyond confidence for me.
And I'll just add to that, get you a hype squad. Like, I mean, mine is my high school girlfriends. I mean, we've been best friends since we were 13 years old, and I'll call them and be like, you know, this happened. They're like, oh no, you know, and they'll just, we're not tolerating that. You stop crying right now. And like, but they're really great at knowing, like, okay, she needs to just cry and we just need to listen to her and then tell her to dry it up, you know, but we need to let her get it out. Or we can tell her real quick, like, nope, we're not crying about that. That's not even worth your tears. And those people are immeasurable, and they come in your life in so many different forms and fashions. You know, Maggie, I think of Amy Hill at GMR, like one of my favorite people in the entire world. And she's an executive assistant at GMR. And she, when I didn't have a job and came looking for one, you know, I kind of had my head down and I was really quiet, and I was getting ready to go speak to the man who ironically is now my boss. He was her boss at the time. And she looked at me and she said, put your chin up. You got this. You look good today. You, like, I feel it for you. And just this complete stranger who was just checking me in, was a receptionist, just gave me that extra ounce of confidence that just put a skip in my step when I walked in there, and it made all the difference. So it doesn't have to be your, long lost best friend. It can be, I find myself complimenting strangers on the street, like, hey, like, great, whatever they did, great job, or you look great, or, nice hair, or whatever. Just like, be positivity just brings people up. And so just find those little things, and then it's really, really hard, but you've got to forget the other stuff. If someone says something, whether they meant it or not, that, is meant to bring you down, if it's constructive criticism, listen to it, take it in, and build from it. But if it's anything other than that, let it go. Easier said than done.
Thank you guys very much, Stephanie. It's always a very thoughtful, wonderful question. And I do want to kind of distill that as well. I think as an organization, we're committed to ethnic diversity and also gender diversity, and we think it makes organizations better, and we think everyone deserves an opportunity. So, I mean, that's why we've asked you here today to inspire younger women, and we think that diversity is a value add, not something that you should just do. So thank you for sharing. I think really we're looking to you guys to truly motivate the next generation to role model for you, right? Because maybe you had that person, or you didn't have that person that looked like you. Hopefully you guys can be that person for that other, the next generation. I think the other thing to add too, as you think about building confidence, draw upon personal experience. I'm looking at some former students. They were really nervous first day of freshman year, right? And they were less nervous sophomore year. And then senior year, they're like, oh, what's up, Steph? How's it going? And now they're scared about getting a job. And I have to remind them, you were scared about college, right? And so you were scared to go to high school, you're scared to go to college, and a weekend in college, like, this is the best thing ever, right? So you've always been there. It's like the diving board test. Like, I was scared to go off the high dive because I was always really nervous. And then you did it. Like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, so you've all gone through those awkward times and pushed through it. And then you like look back and like, oh yeah, I guess I forgot that I did that. So it's just another step. So draw upon personal experience so that you've fought through adversity, made personal gains, learned something new, whatever, and then you're going to find that you're going to have more confidence in yourself. I did want to note, we've got some really strong females here as well, and we've got guys in the room as well, which is by design. I've heard the term blind spot somewhere. Help me or help us understand and or better understand how we should collaborate with women in the workplace, or maybe things that we don't fully understand, or things that we should hear.
I'll start as everyone kind of takes the deep breath.
I was looking at you, Brooke. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I think that, and this isn't against men, but I think that women are extremely skilled multitaskers. I think that we just are born with the ability to do a million things at once. And it's quite frankly, by design, it's because we have to. And so I think one of the things that scares men, or not scares them, but just, has them pause is when we decide to have children. And, can she keep up with all of it? Can she run the college football playoffs and have a child? Can she run a bank sponsorship and have a kid? And the answer is hell yes. And quite frankly, it shouldn't even be a question, because no one is asking a man, well, can he be a CEO and be a father? It's just, I think that the blind spot there is that our society still has the impression that even though it took two people to make a child, it only takes one to raise it, which I very clearly defined to my husband before we had children, that this was not going to be a one-man show or one-woman show. It was going to take the both of us to make it, and it was going to take the both of us to raise them. And it still gets me when, I have a wonderful husband who he drops my son off at school. He does the parent-teacher conferences. He does a lot of the child things because I'm constantly traveling, or at least I was until all of this happened, or I was working late or whatnot, and people would say to me, oh, you're so lucky, oh, and listen, nobody's saying to a man, oh, you're so lucky, when his wife takes care of everything with the child. So I just think that we need to, as a society, start looking at women's ability to do all of the things as a superhero power and not worry that it's going to detract from their day job when they decide. And it could be something other than having a child. They could decide to, they need to take care of their older parents, or they want to run a side business, or, whatever it is that's kind of their other thing. Women can do it. And quite frankly, men can too if they really try, but it's innately in women that we're able to do that. And so my hope is that people don't say, oh, how do you do it all? And it's just kind of this normal expectation that this is what we do.
One thing that I've found is that women are often discounted because we didn't play a sport or didn't play football specifically, or basketball, or whatever it is. And I think that one thing that that everyone can do, is understand that just because we may not know all the X's and O's does not mean that we can't still run an organization or still contribute to that organization. I working in football, obviously I was a woman working in a man's world, as all of us are, but in a very specific way in football, it's, how can you run all the team operations for a national championship game? You never played a game of football in your life. I'm like, well, some of you probably didn't either. But my point is that I grew up watching football, loving football, fell in love with it when I was, can't even remember how old, probably 4 or 5 years old. So I think that, and I do want to make this point, and I think that women in our generation grew up fans of sports because we were allowed to be fans of sports. And so we bring a different perspective as well. And that can be very, very valuable to a sports organization, any sports organization. So I think that men can be advocates for women by understanding that we bring a different perspective. And that is the fan perspective, in like Brooke said, the multitasking perspective, all those things that we can bring to the table, that even though we didn't play the sport, we can still contribute to it.
And people oftentimes say things like, sorry, Pat, people oftentimes say things like, you're really good at this for a woman, right? So like a lot of times it's like, you're so good at your job, but for a woman. So like they discount all of my credentials or my background or my work ethic or my ability to build relationships with people. And they just simply say like, oh, you're a woman, so therefore you are not quite as good. And I think if we just eliminate that phrase of like, women versus men, like if you have the credentials, like I said, you have the resume, you have the network, and you have the references and the people behind you to support you, I mean, it should be apples to apples. Right. So like you're coming to the table, you're bringing skills, you're bringing different perspective, you're bringing multitasking abilities. There's all these things. And so we're only as good as as our diverse organization. And so I think just getting rid of the phrase of like, oh, you're only as good as this as a woman.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you're able to maintain your composure if someone said that to you. We're getting down to the end. So I've got a couple closing, I guess really one specific closing question that I'd love for you guys to address. I could be talking all night. This was great. So thank you so much again for joining us. So I call it kind of Monday morning quarterback, what do you wish you would have known then that you know now? So, as you're giving advice to your high school self, and Maggie, we'll start with you to put the pressure on. As you now have a career in sports, what do you wish you would have known then that you know now? And kind of talking specifically to a high school student that we're going to be enjoying our camp.
Yeah. I think what I wish I would have known at the time was your first job is not your last job. I worked really, really hard to get that first job. And when I didn't necessarily love it and I didn't think that it was what I wanted to do forever, at the time I felt so trapped because I felt like it was the only place that I was ever going to go was that first role. And I think just looking back on it, your career is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And while you may be sprinting at points of your career, it's a really long journey and it's exciting and it's challenging and it's tough. But I think just looking back, like you're going to go so many remarkable places. You're going to do remarkable things. And the first thing that you find yourself doing is not the last thing you'll find yourself doing.
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, you can tell from everyone's bios. It took a little bit longer in the bio. Amy?
The sun is setting here, so I'm going into the lighting. But there's a little Chicago view. You can see it.
Beautiful.
I would say, and it goes back to a little bit of the statement before about being curious in yourself. It is about being open to the adventure wherever it takes you, and being eager to take on whatever role it is, and it will continue to support you when you have the right humans around you. So all these women we have built, whether it's our parents or neighbors or someone at the office, but we've built a tribe, as Brooke said, of people that can support us. And sometimes it's people in class, sometimes it's people that I walk by and I'm like, I'm just having a rough day, can we talk? And they know nothing what I do. But being able to really build that support system around you, I didn't realize how important it was going to be until I continued to advance in my career.
Thank you, Amy. Brooke?
This is going to sound weird, but be selfish. At 18 years old, I wanted to be the next Erin Andrews. I love sports. I love to talk. I wanted to put it together, and I wanted to go into telecommunications. And so I started at Ball State in the telecommunications department. And my first semester, the guy that I was dating at the time, he was just like, hey, like, people just don't make it as sports reporters, and you would have to move a lot, and you're from Frankton, Indiana, which is a town of like 200. So it was just like, this isn't going to work out for you. You need to be a little bit more realistic. And that person was the person that was my person. And so I was like, you know what, you're right. And so I kind of fell back to education, because all of the women in my family were educators. And then I became a basketball coach, because in Indiana, the minute that you stop playing, you're expected to then coach the next, group up, and have them repeat the legacy that your class repeated. And I had a great life. But then when I had what I call my quarter life crisis, I was very selfish, and I left the small town that nobody leaves. I went and worked in a world that nobody works in. And I did a lot of things that a lot of people that I loved and trusted just thought was crazy, and quite honestly tried to talk me out of doing. And it really was because they cared about me, and they didn't want to see me fail, and they didn't want to see me get hurt. But I started in my sports career much later because I listened to people. And so while your parents are wonderful and your teachers are fantastic, if there's something in your heart that you want to do, and you have the drive to do it, don't let anyone stop you.
Thank you, Laila.
That means I'm the closer here. That's pressure. Okay, so I would say that if I had to go back and when I was 18 years old, I would want to know that you don't have to go it alone. That there's somebody out there who can help you. There's somebody out there who wants to help. But on the flip side of that, I would say is that if you can't find that person who can help you, or that you can't find that person that you can connect with, because you don't see somebody who looks like you don't see another woman, you don't see somebody of color who, or whatever it is that you represent, become that person. So that the next time that needs to happen for somebody, that person has the person that they needed to help. So.
Amen.
Yeah, really well said.
That is what we call the perfect close.
I was just gonna say,
because,
nailed it.
Because you are that person, Laila and Brooke and Amy and Maggie, and you're giving us your time, and you're sharing and you're modeling and all those great things, and that is going to inspire young women like Destiny and Lana, and young men like Christian, Zach, and Scott, and inspires me as an educator. So thank you so much for giving your time. Amazing advice. Kind of closing out for prospective students that haven't yet signed up for Sports Biz Camps. This is what you get. This is the great content that you get free of charge. Register at sportsbizcamps.com. The beauty of our industry is that people love what they do, and they can't wait to share it with people that are the next generation. And that's unique to our industry. And it's something that if there's anything that's kind of taken away as a major talking point, was that you don't have to do this alone. You are who you hang out with, and we're fortunate enough to hang out with some amazing people tonight. So thank you to you all for joining. Thank you to our students who made me proud as always. Zach, thank you for joining. And we'll see you guys in Sports Biz Camps next week. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.